among Utah sports fans. We got the worst possible outcome from last night's NBA draft lottery. The Utah Jazz pick 5th. Strongest odds, tied for the highest odds for the number 1 overall pick, which of course would translate into being Cooper Flagg on a floor for you next year. Instead, you don't get 2, you don't get 3, you don't get 4, you don't get 5. Now, that by itself is discouraging enough, is devastating enough, difficult enough for Utah Jazz fans to deal with. I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that the more aggravating part of this, the more unfortunate part of this, the more disgusting part of this, is who did get the number 1 overall pick. With a 1.7% chance of securing pick number 1, the Dallas Mavericks got pick number 1. I'm telling you information you already know. On a show that is brought to you today and every day by our good friends at Les Schwab Tires. Tires, wheels, accessories, air fresheners. They got everything for the car that you drive. Stop by, grab some popcorn, tell them OC sent you. Many locations all up and down the Wasatch Front. Look, what you're looking at with the NBA is a league that is acutely aware of its ratings problems, acutely aware of the conversation around its tanking issues, its load management issues, etc. And a league that at its highest levels is at least having conversations about how they can solve these problems. How can we make sure people are talking about it? How naive am I that I didn't even connect any dots and think about the possibility that the Dallas Mavericks, who agreed to the worst trade potentially in NBA history, we'll see how it all works out at the end of the day. I'm ashamed to admit that I had nowhere in my mind even come up with the possibility like, you know what, there'll be some other pat on the back for Dallas. They're a big enough market. They're an important enough franchise. The NBA will find a way to take care of Dallas. I know there's no scientific evidence for this thing being rigged. I know that the process happens behind closed doors, and the people that are privy to that get to be there in that room, constantly and independently will reassure you that, no, there's no corruption. No. The process is too difficult. It's too complicated. You can't rig it. Like, the logical part of my mind knows that I'm told those things and wants to believe those things. But also, my feet are on the ground. I'm looking at, a cloudy sky. I exist as a human being. And watching what unfolded last night, I'm being expected to believe that the Dallas Mavericks getting the number 1 overall pick with a 1.7% chance of doing so, and the idea that the Dallas Mavericks pulled one of the most unexpected trades in sending their rising star to LA, an LA Lakers franchise who is a season away, maybe 2 seasons at the max away from having no megastar, no superstar, no big draw, and potentially being in a rebuild themselves. Dallas agrees to send their rising superstar and create this massive buzz. It took over every conversation in every sports media outlet for weeks. And I'm supposed to believe that those two things are completely unrelated? I'm supposed to believe that Luka being sent to Dallas unexpectedly and the number 1 overall pick coming back, that is completely unrelated. James, tell me why I should believe those things.
Because they are. I don't have anything else to say. No, it's so much easier to just live in the world and see things the way they are and not look for reasons why everything's out to get you. I'll just leave it that way.
James, you really believe that one thing has no influence on the other?
I do. 1.8% chance teams with 1.8. This is not the first time a team with less than 2% chance got the pick. In fact, I believe the Atlanta Hawks got the number 1 pick last year, and the same thing. There was no prize in the draft last year. The NBA doesn't see Atlanta as a hugely important NBA market. They don't see Dallas that way either. But I can see why someone who wants to be miserable would want to and wants to see the world as, hey, every somehow something's going to be out to get me, would see that, would connect those dots and say, oh, we're going to reward Dallas for sending a superstar who's 25 years old to LA and helping our most important market stay relevant. I can see why you'd connect those dots. They are unrelated, though.
I just can't, in the same year, Dallas sends a star to LA to fill a void that is coming, and then they magically get the number 1 overall pick. I can't believe that they're unrelated. I can't believe that there was no frozen envelope. I can't believe that Derrick Rose ended up in Chicago when they didn't have the highest odds, when he was a Chicago kid. I can't believe that all these things are just – and by the way, it's not just the NBA. Like the NHL draft lottery, you just saw you saw the New York Islanders jump up 9 spots to the number 1 pick, and I think they're going to take the hometown boy, James. It's not a unique only NBA problem. Look, the Utah Mammoth benefited potentially from this because they are the darlings of the NBA as a rising franchise right now. And magically, they moved up 10 spots in the draft. We believe that those two things happened in the same draft. The number 1 pick went to the team that was 11th most likely to get it, and the number 4 pick went to the team that was the last of 10 possibilities there. I mean,
the lottery is, by definition, something that the results of which are come by chance. You cannot predict chance outcomes. You can give probabilities. You can't predict them. That's
I will operate on this.
It's a game of chance.
In a game of chance, the idea that game of chance hits when the highest odds for Cleveland happen to come in the same year that a Cleveland kid is the number 1 overall prospect, that's when it hits.
But I should pull up who were the worst teams in the league in 2003. But Cleveland, again, is not a market that the NBA cares that much about. So why would they? Same person, not just you, but the same archetype of person that subscribes to this kind of conspiracy theory in sports also subscribes to the conspiracy theory that the leagues don't care about small markets. So
and I think
why would Cleveland be rigged to get the number 1 pick? Wouldn't you want the best possibly the best prospect in the history of the NBA draft to go to a larger market? The Knicks, I believe, were probably in the lottery that year. Wouldn't you send him to New York? It doesn't matter where his hometown is. You don't care about the small market. So why would you care about building up a small market team?
Because you know that to get the best version of that player, to get that, maybe you don't know it, but you believe the hometown hero story is something that transcends even let's support our big market.
I mean, if you want to hold on to this, the world is out to get you, conspiracy theory type stuff, OC, you can believe that it transcends whatever to fit your narrative. It's fun. I'm not saying it's not good sports talk radio fodder, and I'm sure we're already getting lots of engagement on this. I don't believe in this conspiracy theory.
So you believe firmly, 100%, that Luka being traded to the Lakers and Dallas getting Cooper Flagg in return are two that's not how it went. That's completely unrelated.
Yes.
You don't believe that the NBA has ever had its fingers in the pie of figuring out which prospect ends up in which market with the NBA draft.
I can't say I believe they never have. I wasn't born and I wasn't born when the lottery started. I don't know what they did in the early days. Since 1985. That's when the lottery started. So maybe there was some things in the early days when they weren't very transparent about the process, but they are 100% transparent about it. And
you don't think that the NBA cared to get Anthony Davis to New Orleans when they owned the New Orleans franchise as a league?
No, why in the hell would they care about New Orleans other than the fact that they happen to operate? But why would that matter?
So that they could sell a more valuable franchise with a star player on it? There's a lot of reasons you could come up with why, and the hometown hero one is the easiest one to explain.
Yeah.
Because the hometown hero in every sport, baseball, Joe Mauer going to the Twins, that's a great narrative for the league no matter what. It's always a good story. It's always something that sports fans can get on board with. Now, there's a ton of layers to this onion you can go to. Cooper Flagg, right? No, everyone in the world, including Cooper Flagg and his family, know that he's going to be the number 1 overall pick. I don't reject the possibility that a conversation is had by, like, I'm picturing some kind of a fixer personality. I don't know who that guy is. I don't know who that individual is. I don't know who they look like. But I'm picturing in my theatrical NBA fan mind that they've got like a Billy Bob Thornton in the Landman series type character who's like, all right, I'm here to fix all the problems. George Clooney in whatever that movie is where Michael Clayton, where he's the fixer, right? Where this person calls the Flagg family and says, hey, you're going to be the number 1 overall pick. The upcoming NBA draft, it might be the Utah Jazz, and that family being like, ooh, maybe? I don't know. It might be the San Antonio Spurs. Ooh, okay. All right. It might be the Charlotte Hornets. You're already in Carolina. I don't know. I'm hoping for a change of scenery here. I mean, I'm not rejecting any possibility in how the machinations of this are done, except I am rejecting the mathematical possibility that it has happened fewer times. Well, 2019 is when they made the change, right, to flatten out the odds. The worst team has never gotten the number 1 pick since that happened. I mean, and I know it's a small sample size.
That was by design, though.
Yeah, you're right.
Not for them never to get it, but it was by design to discourage tanking, which has not worked. But maybe it will now that the 3 teams with the best odds have never gotten it. Maybe next year, the year after, teams stop trying to be the worst team in the NBA. So we just had a caller, Ron called in, and he didn't have time to come on the phone to talk about it, but he wanted to say that why don't they put it in front of everybody?
Why don't they put it in front of anybody?
Instead of doing the process in front of select media members and league officials and team officials in a Chicago ballroom before they do the TV show, why not do it in front of everybody? I'll say this. We just watched the NHL draft lottery happen like that in front of everybody, and UOC are still saying that somehow should have been rigged. So I'm not sure that doing it in front of everybody would dispel people's conspiracy theories.
You're probably right.
So that might be why they don't do it in front of everybody.
Because didn't they do it in front of everybody when Patrick Ewing got picked by the Knicks?
I think they might have. There was, for a long time, they had the machine and pulled out.
Right? So we've seen it. So, again, and there are people, by the way.
We appreciate Ron for calling in, by the way.
Yeah, 877-353-0700. Always appreciate any interaction we can get on the text line or on the phone lines. And there are Look, it's about 70-30. There are about 70% of people who've responded, not to my polls only on Twitter, but like big. I saw one. I'll find out which national personality put it out last night. There were about 70% of the respondents and multiple thousands of respondents. 70%-ish said, yeah, this thing is rigged. And 30% said no. And that's fine. If all 70% of us are wrong and count me among the 70%, that's fine. But perception is reality in a lot of ways. And the NBA has a perception problem. Here's a couple things. We don't agree. James and I don't agree on whether or not there was any kind of outside influence on this. One thing I think we probably could agree on here is that there's a big-time perception problem right now with the NBA because the coincidence is so disgustingly and remarkably strong in a year where Dallas does this thing that nobody understood, and now this makes it seem a little bit more understandable. So, okay, maybe that's just maybe that's fine. Maybe it is a coincidence. I'll live with that. The perception problem is a huge one for the NBA.
I'm not sure that the NBA will try to combat it with any kind of PR though, because
they won't, because if you engage in the argument, you're only adding to fuel. You're only lending credibility to the argument. So
I think
the NBA,
they just
the right
stand
thing
by. They stand by the idea
they
that
just
I
say,
that
hey,
I believe
we
that
totally
hey,
randomized this process, and there's nothing you can do, and deal with it, right?
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, and it's a hard pill to swallow for
one thing.
Fans like in Utah, for example, that we're really hoping for Cooper Flag, and they did everything they could to get him.
Here's the thing. Whether you agree with it being rigged or you disagree with it being rigged, one thing that is very, very clear, and this matters a lot more for the Utah Jazz, is that tanking isn't worth it.
Yeah.
Since 2019, we have been shown that it does not yield the results that you are hoping for, and for the Utah Jazz to have engaged in this and to embarrass themselves as a franchise, the thing that was going to justify it was getting Cooper Flag, or at least getting Dylan Harper. Yeah. You got the worst possible outcome. This is completely unacceptable from the local. I'm not talking about the NBA rigging things anymore. I'm talking about it's unacceptable that you asked your fan base to understand what you're doing, and you asked your players to understand what you're doing, and you asked your coach, who you rewarded with an extension, partially because of his performance in this tanking year, to then say, guess what, guys? You have to understand there's fruits of this labor, okay? You're going to believe this was the right thing to do when Cooper Flag is wearing a Utah Jazz jersey. And whether the NBA or the Flag family or whoever said, you know what, we're not going to allow that to happen, or it happened because of mathematical impossibility, what you have found out is this year-long experiment not worth it. Tanking is not a method that you should ever support from your favorite team, certainly not with the draft lottery. Not in the NHL, not in the NBA. And anytime that it's left to chance and it is not a direct, like if you want to tank for Arch Manning as an NFL franchise, fine.
Yeah,
you can talk about that.
You can control that.
You can control it. You're absolutely right.
Because there's no lottery. It's just order of where you finish from worst to best.
Yes, and by the way, there will be conversations about who's going to try to do that after about week 4 in the NFL this year. But what we know, and is far more salient to the local market here, is that your ticket prices have gone up. Your concession prices on some items have gone down, but on most have gone up. Your parking prices have gone up. Your merchandise prices have gone up. It is now cost prohibitive for an average family to have season tickets, certainly, to have a regular attendance to a Jazz game, certainly. And what you got this past year, your support, your dedication to the cause, you know what, I'm going to trust you, you've been rewarded in exactly 0 ways. You've gotten nothing back for it. Nothing. You got a number 5 pick.
Yeah, I'll say this. There are probably a number of front offices, and I don't know for sure, pure speculation, but I don't think I would count out the Jazz front office as one that would say, if you can guarantee me a top 5 pick every year, I'm really bad. that's worth it. Because you have a really good chance to get a franchise-changing player in the top 5 almost every year in the draft. Obviously not the best, but in the top 5. So that's the only counterpoint I might make is if a team in the position of the Utah Jazz that sees themselves not in contention in the foreseeable future goes, you know what, 3 years in a row, if we guarantee ourselves a top 5 pick 3 years in a row, by year 4 I would hope that we'd be in contention. And that sucks. That's a sucky proposition from a fan's perspective, but that might be a calculus that a front office like the Utah Jazz might be willing to live with.
So if you end up, let's say you tank 3 years in a row,
and you end up the worst or second worst record 3 years in a row.
Okay,
yeah.
Let's say you end up with this year VJ Edgecombe or Con Knipple, right? You had that to
Who doesn't
Lowry
like
Markkinen.
a Knipple?
Yeah. You had that to Lowry Markkinen and Walker Kessler. Okay, now you're slightly better next year, but not better enough that it really makes anything different. Okay. And then you get the number 3 pick next year, and you end up
maybe that's. I mean, I think Cam Boozer's one that looks as his number 2 pick.
He's
but
probably number 2.
Let's just
the other Boozer.
Yeah, let's just say Cam Boozer for argument's sake, because I don't know a lot of the other top.
You don't
guys.
get AJ DeBonsa, but you get Cam Boozer. All right,
really good guard.
So now you have Cam Boozer, Con Knipple, Lowry Markkinen, Walker Kessler, and an aged Jordan Clarkson who has decided to be the elder statesman on this team and not look off in search of greener pastures.
I think his contract would be out by then. But
I think you're right.
Just for fun, we'll keep Jordan Clarkson on the team.
A fan favorite who's not going to really help you win a lot of games. Okay? Forgive me, I don't know in 2027 what the draft looks like.
Yeah, we don't know the sophomores in high school.
But what I say
right now,
Lowry Markkinen, Walker Kessler, Con Knipple, and Cam Boozer, and Jordan Clarkson.
And we'll say one other starter a year later from the draft.
That's not, I can confidently say this, that is not a Western Conference championship team.
Yeah.
That is not 3 years of them playing together is not a Western Conference championship team. So here's what we know. Tanking isn't worth it in the NBA. Don't support it moving forward. Like, if your team is just bad, great. But if I'm buying a Jazz ticket, Lowry Markkinen better be playing. I want to see Walker Kessler and Lowry Markkinen and Isaiah Collier and whoever else on the field 70 games next year. Knocking on wood that they all stay healthy.
Yeah. Like, if they miss, it better be for legitimate injury or the occasional rest day. Yeah. I'm on board for that because I don't like the losing on purpose thing. I don't like the intentional tanking thing that has gone on in the league. And like I said, as we got into this part of the conversation, because of what you mentioned when they flattened the lottery odds for the worst 3 teams in the league, none of those teams have gotten the number 1 overall pick. I would hope that front offices are thinking the way that you're thinking, OC. This is not worth it.
I mean,
we're going to have a mass exodus at our games at some point, even here in Salt Lake City, where Jazz fans have shown way more patience than almost any other franchise in the league. Like, yeah, I still want to go to games. I still want to pay those prices for tickets. I still want to pay for the parking. I still want to buy those concessions, buy those jerseys, even if the colors are just terrible. I still want to buy the highlighter yellow Lowry Markkinen or the black and yellow Lowry Markkinen jersey, Keontae George jerseys. That's a popular one I saw at arenas this year. Like, Jazz fans have shown that they're willing to do that still, but that's not always going to be the case.
It's not. This has been yesterday has been the most damaging PR thing that has happened for the Utah Jazz since I have paid attention to the Utah Jazz, and that is not an exaggeration.
It probably is.
Because even when things got kind of ugly with the Jerry Sloan, D. Will situation, but that was something we attributed to personality conflict and
and
a
Darren,
generational gap, and we had we were able to blame Darren.
Yeah.
And thankfully, because I know Darren, I love Darren, he's a really good guy. We've come back off that. That's less.
Yeah, that was less of a Jazz PR problem than it was a Darren Williams PR problem at the time.
Absolutely. I have not seen anything in my Jazz lifetime that has been more damaging to the Jazz level of respect, relationship with the community, whatever, than this outcome in a draft lottery. And again, something that the Jazz had no control over. The lottery itself, the Jazz couldn't touch. I believe that the NBA does touch it. I believe that the Dallas Mavericks and the LA Lakers had a chance to touch it. Even if you don't believe that, I think we can agree that the Jazz didn't get to touch this one. The thing that they could control was their level of effort and dedication to trying to win and develop and things like that. And they abdicated that in favor of a 14% chance to get Cooper Flagg. And instead of hitting on that 14% chance, they hit on the, what was it, like a 54% chance that they would get the number 5 pick, the worst possible outcome for them. And so
the best chance that was the highest percentage chance of a pick that they could get, out of any one pick that they could get, but it was the worst outcome. Absolutely.
Some great text coming in. 6879 says, Sean, if you're Lowry, why would you still want to be here? I'm 100% asking out if I'm him. No chance I'm going through another tank. Well, if I'm him, I'm saying that. I'm saying I'm not tanking again.
Yeah. I don't think he has the leverage to ask out at this point because of how long of a deal he just signed.
Got a long deal, but also why do you want to be? Why you still want to be here if you're Lowry?
Yeah.
Because he likes Utah. Because he's making $40 million to live in Salt Lake City. He's got young kids. He likes living here. That's something that we never give enough credit in the sports world. Really, like. Are you happy where you are? Do you like the community that you live in? Yes, it would get a lot harder to like where you live if you go to work every day and you hate it. I don't think he hates it. I think that's a Will Hardy thing. That's why he deserved his extension. I know a lot of people who work in this Jazz organization, from broadcasters on down. There's a lot of great people who work in this Jazz organization. Would it be a lot better and more fun if you were winning at a high clip? Obviously, yes. But I promise you this. There are a lot worse situations that you can go into than being fabulously, disgustingly wealthy in your 20s, living in Salt Lake City, Utah, and working for the Utah Jazz organization, which is an organization full of awesome people. That's why Lowry would want to stay here. But there's no way that he's going to be like signing off if they ask him, which they won't. Like, hey, yeah, I would love to be part of another tank. Let's do what we can to get this AJ DeBonsa kid. By the way, if you're deep enough into the conspiracy world, maybe AJ DeBonsa is the kind of kid who would stay in Salt Lake City. So maybe the league would be like, that's as much of a hometown hero story as the Jazz are ever going to get.
Or it's a different kind of hometown hero story that goes against the Jazz, given the fact that he's from Boston.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Boston's too good, but
I shouldn't have put that out there,
Boston's
OC.
too
My
good.
bad.
But
I don't know.
Just tore their Achilles tendon
Yeah.
and is going to be out next year. Remember when the Golden State Warriors mid-dynasty suddenly had everybody on the team hurt and ended up with a draft that could sustain their greatness for a couple more years?
Number two pick did not work out for them because they picked James Wiseman, but they were right in the position to extend the dynasty if only they had taken LaMelo Ball instead.
My conspiracy mind keeps going. To put it on the record,
I don't mean to completely be the anti-fun guy here. I thought I'd give the
it's okay. It's kind of the role that you've embraced.
I thought I'd give the contrasting opinion, which I firmly believe too.
Here's the thing. The NBA spent most of the year with a perception problem because of ratings numbers. And that conversation evaporated with the Luka trade. And then the playoffs started. And the playoffs have been phenomenal. And then this draft and the 1.7% chance hitting in favor of the Dallas Mavericks, right or wrong, calls into question again the validity, the integrity of the draft lottery system, especially because, look, if the San Antonio Spurs had hit the number 1 pick, everyone would just be like, oh my gosh, how lucky are the Spurs? But because it was the Dallas Mavericks, it feels like it was manipulated. If it was the Hornets that got the number 1 pick, all of us would just be like, oh, wow, he's going to stay in Carolina. This is the only outcome that would have made me feel like this thing is totally engineered. And here we are. Okay, we got to take a break. Gordy Chase is going to join us on the other side. I bet Gordy is in the James camp, and maybe he, with all of his NBA experience, maybe he can talk me back off this conspiracy ledge. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
The 11th pick belongs to the Portland Trail Blazers. That means Dallas has moved inside the top 4. The Mavericks have never won the lottery.
The 5th pick in the NBA draft will be made by the Utah Jazz. The number 1 pick in the 2025 NBA draft goes to the Dallas Mavericks.
That sound, you know what that sounds from. NBA Draft Lottery, ESPN Radio. Kevin Agandi narrated the announcements by Deputy Commissioner Mark Tatum. Jazz end up with the number 5 pick. Mavs win the lottery for the first time in franchise history. They get number 1. Gordy Chiesa joins us to help us digest. Gordy, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm doing fine, OC, and I'm saddened for all the Jazz fans today where there was a high level of expectation that the Jazz might get either not the first pick, definitely the 2nd pick. They slipped to 5, and it just shows you that it's the great unknown. OC, this is the 3rd straight year that the team with the worst record fell to the 5th slot.
Gordy, a lot of people, myself included, look at Dallas winning this after the Luka trade and all that and think, man, these two things cannot be unrelated. This has to be some kind of manipulation, some kind of like grand script, some scheme. What do you say to those of us who are questioning the integrity of this draft lottery?
Come on, OC. This is not conspiracy theory. This is done by really transparency. So the answer is it's this old-fashioned good luck for the Mavericks and bad luck for many other teams. No, it's not. It's absolutely transparent. It's all in front of you. In fact, Andy Lawson was right there as far as up to the point where they actually made the selections and stuff. So Andy Lawson, the Tribune, would know even more as far as actually being there. No, it's not at all, but it's painful. That's what happens. And to add to that, I just want to put it in context. This is back-to-back years now. A team that was in the play-in tournament, not in the playoffs, secured the first pick. In 2024, the Atlanta Hawks got Zachary Richardson, and in 2025, the Dallas will probably get, I'm assuming they're going to take Cooper Flag. So this shows you that the teams, not even in the playoffs, just in a play-in tournament, are getting the first pick. That's why it's so important. So the question is, philosophically, was it worth this year losing? That's the big context question, because it's the unknown. And you don't know the lottery god how it's going to fall in your place.
Well, it feels like that is the most important takeaway from a Jazz perspective, that, this heartbreak, as hard as it is to digest and to accept, you kind of got to deal with it. And it tells us that aggressively tanking, being the worst team in the league, is, from a results standpoint, it is not worth it. I mean, if it's not going to guarantee you or do more to guarantee you, maybe not even the number 1 pick, but like at least the top 3 pick, you can't engage in that as a strategy moving forward, in my opinion. Is this going to affect the way that the Utah Jazz approach next season, the season beyond? Because it's not like they're going to, even if they got the number 1 overall pick, they still wouldn't be a playoff team next year. But is this going to affect the way that they approach the rest, the load management, and the deliberate tanking moving forward?
Yes, absolutely. They're going to definitely reevaluate it. Again, the players want to perform. So let's lose Larry Markkinen, who was an all-star now 3 years ago. I knew he was hurt during the year, but they held him out some games. Jordan Clarkson, 6th man of the year, voted by the league. I knew he had plantar fasciitis some of the time. They held him out. Colin Sexton, that guy is fiery, plays hard. They held him out. And so this is an eye-opening as far as any organization, that when you try to totally bend the rules, as far as it usually doesn't work out. Usually. And that's what you can learn from this. So you want to play the younger guys for development, but also if you keep losing, there's no development, LC. Just remember, this is a results business, and that a lot of times when you play young guys, they're on the court playing, and they're the reason why the team is losing. because they're not ready for prime time. And usually speaking, young guys, including this guys most guys in this draft, minus a few exceptions, there's always an outlier. They're absolutely offensive minded, and defensively they're lacking, and it's a distant second at how they think. After that, most of the guys are 19, 20 years old, and so this is a man's league. We see in the playoffs all the time that the men step up in the playoffs, where you have to be physical, et cetera, et cetera. When you're 18, 19 years old, maybe you're really athletic and you're bouncy, but you're not ready for prime time. And that's the great debate as far as how do you balance your roster with some young guys that play old and some older guys that play young.
If you're a player, this Jazz locker room, I mean, they all kind of, it seemed like, accepted that the strategy was to tank this year, and there was not a lot of complaining. Morale stayed as high as you could expect for a team that was worst in the league. And, you know, I imagine that everything the fans are feeling is distilled and purified and even more acute for someone whose livelihood is attached to the performances last year and moving forward. If you're a coach and a player in that locker room watching that lottery happen, what is the feeling when you were the ones who had to go out and, for lack of a better term, underperform, hoping that you would get a better pick, and you didn't get that? So now it didn't feel like whatever sacrifice you made was worth it. How are they feeling right now?
Empty, because they lost a year of their playing career as far as trying to showcase what they can do. And you yourself, being a former elite athlete, is that you know what it's like, that Father Time does step in eventually in your career. And so for many of these guys, again, I'm a fan. Even though I do this for a living for the last 50-something years, I'm really a fan. And I keep thinking about the fans, how when I go to all the Jazz, I went to every Jazz game this year, so it's not that I'm just saying out loud, is that I feel for the fans because of the economics of it. And so what you want to do is if you're a player or a fan, you want to get some bang for your buck. And as they go forward, I'm sure they're going to reevaluate some of the lessons they've learned from a player standpoint. Generally speaking, they're going to say it wasn't worth it. So Keontae George, a young guy again, let's say Isaiah Collier, John Collins, who got hurt later on during the year, Walker Kessler, those guys like that, in their mind right now, they're saying that we don't want to go this again, that we're being disrespected by our peers. And we go back to our hometowns in the summertime. We play in Vegas, or we play in Santa Monica, or we play in New York City, that people think that we're chumps, that we can't play. And the answer is, yes, we can play, and now we're going to show it.
Gordy Chase is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking all things NBA after the disappointing draft lottery results for the Utah Jazz. And that obviously locally overshadows what otherwise would be the biggest story in the NBA. The playoffs, a superstar, Jason Tatum, goes down on a non-contact injury last night. Speculation looks like it's an Achilles tear, which of course is a big-time injury, a long rehab, all that kind of stuff. This is devastating for the Celtics, devastating for fans of Tatum. How bad is it for the league, and is this something that Boston can overcome?
Okay, it's bad for the league. It's definitely bad for Jason Tatum. And for the Celtics, it's very unlikely they can overcome in the present tense. So, Sean, getting back, you and I talked about this many times this past season. Just say if. I think the Celtics are going to win tomorrow night in TD Garden, but I do think the Knicks are going to win in Game 6 in MSG. So, which means that if that happens, so it goes 6 games, Knicks knock out the defending champion 4-2, it will be the 7th straight season where a different NBA champion. And 2019, Raptors. 2020, the bubble, Lakers. 2021, Bucks. 2022, Warriors. 2023, Nuggets. 2024, Celtics. 2025, question mark. And so the learning point about this, it's so hard to repeat. There's so many variables out of your control. Only second we learned about the NBA draft lottery, there's so many variables out of your control. And so it's hard for the Celtics to overcome him. And with if it was Achilles, again, we're just speculating for the fans right now listening, is that roughly it takes usually, most times, 10 months to a year. That would put Jason Tatum out probably for the whole year next year. So it sets them back, the Celtics, tremendously. Oh, by the way, the Celtics have the most NBA titles in the history of the league with 18 championships.
Just a devastating series of events there for Boston. Let's talk about the rest of these playoff series. The Knicks are up 3-1, so even with Jason Tatum, I don't know if the Celtics were going to be able to overcome that. Also 3-1, Minnesota up on the Warriors. From a big picture perspective, the Warriors with Jimmy Butler trying to prop that dynasty window open a little bit longer. Next year, I don't think the Warriors are going to overcome this 3-1 deficit. I don't think that they're going to win this series. What does the Warriors' future look like as a contender in the West with Steph getting another year older and everything else that's happening on that roster?
Okay, they've got to reevaluate. The big question is Kuminga. Kuminga is a young guy, a restricted free agent. He went from playing some to not playing, and now playing really well, relatively speaking, as far as scoring the ball. But he does have talent in the play. He got 23 points last night, restricted. So they might use Kuminga if they don't re-sign him, because the economics of it is that they think that there's some personality quirkiness that they'll use him as a trade bait. And so, for example, just saying, would the Jazz ever trade Larry Marketing to the Warriors for Jonathan Kuminga, and we'll say let's go Kuminga, Moses Moody, Quentin Post, and some other players to get him. So the answer is that these trades like that will be out there. So the Warriors, they just can't stay the same because they're absolutely aging, and they need help offensively to help Steph. So Steph missed right now. He got hurt in the second quarter of Game 1. He missed all of Game 2. He missed all of Game 3 and all of Game 4. He's going to miss Game 5. And I think that the T-Wolves are going to knock him out, and they're going to advance to the conference finals for the second year in a row.
So Knicks up 3-1, Wolves up 3-1, Pacers up 3-1. Can the Cavaliers overcome that?
No, Donovan's got a left ankle sprain. Only played 20 minutes in Game 4, and he needs help. And very simply is that Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, and Darius Garland off that toe injury, they have struggled shooting the ball. So their problem with the Cavaliers is that they can't score, minus Donovan Mitchell. They're only shooting 30.2% from threes for the series. So again, Sean, think about it. All season long, this thing called the three-point shooting, the Love Fest, is absolutely in front of our eyes for the first 82 games. Then a thing called the playoffs come, and that's when the defense is schematically ready to go. Physicality is a factor, and the shot is suddenly challenged majority of the time. So the shot of choice is the middle game, 15 to 17, 14, 12 feet, take the ball top of the cup to try to score or draw a foul. And then when teams keep shooting threes, they're challenged now. And so you have to almost like redirect yourself somewhat. So with that said, the Pacers should knock them out. The Pacers have a tremendous all-around team. They're numbers 1 through 8. There's really no star players, minus Halliburton and Siakam, and those guys are all-stars. But they have a top group. Their coach is terrific, and Rick Carlisle. I think they're going to win the series.
What's the list today, Gordy? Okay,
the list today is about coaching. Is that Chris Finch of the T-Wolves, that guy's underrated. And Rick Carlisle, we know, won a championship with the Mavs in 2011, underrated also. Here's the list, though. The most career wins by a head coach in NBA playoff history. So it's the top 13, most ever by a coach. And there's a Jazz flavor in here. And quickly, is that What are the 7 master traits of a great coach? And it's every level now. So this is the NBA. This could be, Sean, the NFL. This could be junior high school. This could be ward ball. This could be CYO. Here we are. 1, listening. 2, communicating. 3, teaching. 4, organizing. 5, delegating. 6, inspiring. And 7, under pressure skills. So if you're a great coach, you have the majority of those skills. Here we go. Number 13 all time, Rick Adelman with 79 career playoff wins. Number 11 tied, Lenny Wilkins and George Karl with 80 playoff wins. Number 10 all time, Casey Jones, 81. Number 9, Utah Jazz, my colleague Jerry Sloan with 98 career playoff wins. Number 8 all time, Fred Auerbach with 99. Number 7, Larry Brown all time with 100. Number 6, he coaches the Golden State Warriors, Steve Kerr with 104. Number 5 all time, Eric Spoelstra of the Heat, 110. Number 4 of all time, Doc Rivers of many teams, 114. Number 3, just retired after 29 years as the head coach of the San Antonio Spurs, Greg Popovich has 170 postseason wins. Number 2 of all time, he runs the Miami Heat for many, many years. A tremendous coach, Pat Riley, with 171 career postseason victories. And the all-time winningest coach, we all know he's already, from Chicago Bulls and the LA Lakers, Phil Jackson, has a total of 229 career victories in postseason, where he coached in 333 postseason games. Thus, that's my list. That's the power of coaching.
Gordy, you're the man. Thank you for your time today. Talk to you Thursday.
Thanks, Sean. Peace out. Bye now.
Gordy Chiesa. Gordy is not in the conspiracy bandwagon with me. He's with James on the wagging the finger at all of us with our tinfoil hats on.
He laughed in your face, OC.
Well, he would have laughed in my face, but he laughed in my ear.
He laughed in your ear, OC, through the phone.
We got golf to give away later today. 18 holes to Mount Ogden, courtesy of the Festival of Tees, Utah Golf Association, Mountain America Credit Union. We're giving it away on Down and Dirty with Scott Mitchell, Sean O'Connell show right here, and on the Drive with Spence Checketts. Hot lunch, the NFL going international in 2025. 7 games. James is going to buy you tickets to one of them. Tell me which one you want to go to. That's next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. NFL schedule release officially is tomorrow, but they're starting to leak some things, throwing some things out there to pique your interest. International slate for the NFL, which is this is so fascinating to me because, like, in Canada, the NFL is big. In Mexico, the NFL is big. They're trying to make it a global sport, much like the NBA is. A difficult task, but one that they are spending a lot of money on and they are dedicated to, and franchises, teams seem to be on board with it. As a special feature here in our 2025 season, James Peterson, who's the boss around here, is going to identify some fans who want to go to international games, and he's gonna figure it out. He's gonna.
OC, people are gonna believe you.
He's gonna. Here's the thing, James Peterson's gonna help you watch the NFL international games.
Okay.
Okay.
If you need I've got a lot of recommendations of places where you can watch it for free that have NFL Network. If you don't, I can help you out with that.
I can't promise that James is going to send you to any of these locations, but
Big Willie's a sponsor of ours.
Yeah,
they have NFL Network. You can watch
Big Willie's is a phenomenal place to watch a game. All right, James. Instead of identifying a place to send our listeners, I'm gonna tell you. You get to choose one of these games to attend.
Okay.
Choose which one you're gonna go to on your own dime. Chargers.
You're not gonna let me use your miles?
Chargers playing against somebody we don't know who yet, which is odd. On September 5th in Sao Paulo, Brazil.
They didn't announce the opponent for the Chargers?
It's still TBA the last time I saw.
Interesting.
Steelers Vikings in Dublin, September 28th. Vikings Browns in London, October 5th. So the Vikings are just staying over across the pond, doing 2 weeks in a row over there.
Yeah. By the way, real quick, the Vikings are now the first team in league history to play not only 2 international games back. We've had the Jaguars have played international games back to back. This is back-to-back games.
Different countries.
In different countries.
Yeah.
UK still. So they're not traveling too far.
No, Ireland is not
Ireland's
in the UK.
not in the UK.
Northern Ireland is in the UK.
Oh, okay.
Dublin is the Republic of Ireland.
Okay. I learned something there. I know that some Irish listeners probably were like, "Nah, don't put us in with those guys."
Yeah. That's
Northern Ireland.
I was just in Northern Ireland. And that's thankfully, it's all peaceful now, but
I know there's been not quite civil war, but quite the tension between the two countries.
Yeah, I mean,
over the years.
Until the 90s, there was effectively civil war.
Yeah.
Anyway, the Troubles, they called them.
But anyway, in the UK region.
Yes.
Not too far.
In the Isles.
In the Isles. So not too far. They don't have to travel too far, but it's
an hour
still
flight.
Technically 2 different countries. That's amazing. That's a pretty cool thing.
Dublin to London is 1 hour, so they'll be all right. Okay, Broncos Jets in London, Rams Jaguars in London, Falcons Colts in Berlin, and then Dolphins Commanders in Madrid.
So, I'm a Colts fan, so I'm picking the Colts game. But I'm gonna. That should be just understood. So if we set that one aside,
okay,
the one that I would.
That's probably the best pick. Berlin,
yes,
is one of my favorite cities I've ever been to. It is so fascinating.
I've never been. I'd love to go to Berlin.
If you're interested at all in, World War II history and things like that, Berlin is amazing. I recommend anyone who has a chance to go to Berlin, go see Berlin.
Yeah, I'd love to go to. I'd love to go to Berlin and then get to see a Colts game in Berlin. That would be amazing for me. If we're gonna set that one aside though, because I'll go to the Colts game, right? I probably would choose the Dolphins Commanders. Go to Madrid. Yeah.
Yeah. By the way, that's late November or mid-November.
So I'd go to two games in November. That's the way I would do it.
It'll be a lot warmer in Madrid in mid-November than it will be in Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
So not bad. Not a bad choice there.
And two good teams. I mean, one that might be a Super Bowl contender in the Commanders next year. Dolphins not quite Super Bowl contender, but still a fun team to watch. I mean, that's also an entertaining game.
Yeah, you know what? I think I'm. Here's the deal, James. You're the boss. We're doing the show from Madrid the week of November 16th. All right,
Yeah, book it.
let's go.
Let's do that.
Are travel agencies still a thing? Can we get a travel agent to be like a sponsor for us
Absolutely.
and send us over there? Everyone would love to hear us coming. Let's see. The show at Madrid is probably. So we would be doing the show from about 10 p.m. to 1 a.m.
Yeah.
In Madrid time, but people wouldn't know. It'd sound like 11 to 2 right here.
Absolutely. We'll just sleep in the next day because we don't have the responsibilities to get up. We don't have to necessarily get up Utah time, early Utah time.
There
Absolutely.
you go.
Yeah.
All right.
I'm down.
You all heard it here. James Peterson, program director at ESPN 700. He has committed legally
November
for us to
15th
do
to
show from
whenever,
Madrid.
or November 14th, I guess that's the Friday before that game, right? If the 16th is a Sunday.
Yeah.
November 14th to 16th, we will be in Madrid.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And then we'll have to figure out how to get home and do the show for the following Monday.
The
Tuesday,
day after
Wednesday,
the game.
Thursday. Yeah, it might be difficult, but we're going to figure it out. James is committed to it on the air.
London is also like, I've never been to London. That's also a city rich in history. Would love to go to London, but I think I'd rather go to Berlin or Madrid.
Yeah. I love London. I like London more than a lot of people like London. I'm a big fan of London, but because I've spent time there and I have not spent time in Madrid, that's where that's where I want to go. I've never been to Sao Paulo. I've been to the other cities: Dublin, London, Berlin. Haven't been to Madrid. So
your favorite out of all those international cities you've been to that have a game. So Dublin, Berlin, London.
Here's the thing. I should say Dublin just because I'm Irish, but when I went to Dublin, it rained all but 1 hour that I was there. I was there for 4 days.
And just like
and it just rained.
Can't be outside kind of rain.
Yeah, just cold, like kind of miserable. You have to have an umbrella or
not Utah
poncho.
where it's that way for 5 minutes and then okay.
Yeah, it was
it's not bad.
It was real rain, which is why Ireland is so green and beautiful most of the time, but so it diminished my experience. I couldn't go out and see the castles and the countryside and all that stuff. So Dublin is cool, great, history, and you can go in some of the old buildings and kind of enjoy that. But yeah, and then London just has everything you could ever want. London is what I think Americans wish New York was.
Yeah,
it's very it's a hyper modern city with all the amenities, everything you could
great
possibly
architecture.
need.
Like we talk about Brooklyn Bridge a lot as Americans. Like the
wonderful.
London Bridge is amazing.
They have
I've heard
even more historical sites, and the tube is like it's where I was at least. I know it gets dodgy the further out you go, but it's like
good British slang
what I did there.
Yeah,
like
dodgy.
In the heavy use areas, like in the touristy areas, the tube is very friendly and clean and all that kind of stuff. So it's like, there's not the smell of urine and rats everywhere. So I don't know. London's great.
That probably your favorite out of the three you've been to?
Oh man, it's Berlin.
It's Berlin.
Yeah, Berlin is so cool. And Berlin, this is a random aside. In Berlin, the Germans did something that I'm convinced in the United States we wouldn't have done the same thing. There's an entire collection of museums. There's like a whole museum complex about the World War II history. Where remember, this is German soil, and this was officially at the time the Nazis were the German government. They were like the official party.
So this is history that does not smile upon.
It's not
Germany.
flattering.
Not
Germany
flattering
at
for
all.
Germany.
And they do some really carefully curated and honest looks at all of it.
Lean into it.
And they're just like, we never want this to happen again. And so you have to tell the truth about it. And I was blown away by that because in the United States, we are not. I don't think we're not inclined to look at our mistakes that way. And certainly not as a government, as a country, as individuals, sure.
Yeah, there's some exceptions of not necessarily government, but like big organizations that have done similar things with made some similar museums to say we messed up.
Like, correct
And
me
we're
if I'm
gonna show
wrong.
you. We're gonna show you everything, but there's not a ton.
877-353-0700. Is there like a Vietnam museum that I'm not aware of that's like, hey, we probably shouldn't have done this, kind of a Vietnam museum? Because that's all of these like really, really top level, like A+++ exhibits and museums in Berlin and monuments that take up huge swaths of property in the city center that you could use for any of it, an assortment of things, and they're memorials to those lost in the Holocaust. And you're just like, whoa.
In Berlin, Germany.
In Berlin, Germany. This is, and you know what the wildest thing is? I promise I'll get off this. I was riding, like the little Lime scooters or whatever.
Yeah.
I was just scootering around the city. And they have little, like historical markers all around the city, wherever you're at. And I was going from this museum complex back to the hotel. And I was riding a little scooter. It's a beautiful day, just enjoying the bike paths all over Berlin. And there was this historical marker in front of a hyper unassuming, just like an everyday average, you never would have seen this thing stick out, apartment complex. But there's one of these historical markers on like the little grass where the people there take their dogs to go pee, right? It's just like a very random spot. But this pretty big historical marker. And I walked over to it, and it's got in German on one side and in English on the other side, it's got the significance of what this place is. It was the site of the Führer bunker. It's where Hitler allegedly died. It's like this
where
marker.
he hid out and then died.
This apartment complex, this parking lot you're looking at, and the apartment complex behind it, underneath that was the underground complex where the leaders of the Reich went and made their final stand, allegedly.
Wow.
And I'm just like, what?
Random spot.
Yeah, just this totally random spot. And I also thought that was really telling and interesting in Berlin about how, like, that was just like, it tells the whole story, the timeline of how, like, at first they kind of left it there. The Russians blew it up, and it kind of collapsed in on itself, and they kind of left it there for a while. Then they're like, well, what do we want to do with this? Because we don't want to glorify this. We don't want to keep it here. What are we going to do with it? And they eventually were just like, you know what? Dig it up and sell off this land. Let's just, like, get rid of this. And all that's left of it is that little historical marker and a patch of grass where dogs can pee.
That's amazing.
Isn't that wild? And you're just like, I totally happened upon it by chance.
Yeah.
Wow. Anyway.
I don't want to spend any time on this, but the only thing I can think of here domestically and is not government related that's similar to, hey, we're going to lean into this, we're going to tell people about it even though it's shameful for us, Mountain Meadow Massacre. Mm-hmm. The monument is owned and run by the church in central Utah. So that's probably the only thing. But to your point,
have you been there?
That's not a government thing. I have not been.
I haven't been there.
But a shameful thing that the church would be, you would think that they'd be like, you know what, we're just going to not tell anyone about this. They've decided, no, we're going to tell this story, and we're going to talk about how we messed up. So
if you don't have plans November 9th and you want to go to Berlin for the game, or on November 16th, you want to hang out in Madrid with me and James, that's the NFL International slate. The Hot Lunch this week is brought to you by E3 Energy Cubes. Go to e3energycubes.com. Check out all the incredible flavors. Tell them OC sent you. Healthy, incredible food, real sustained energy, because that's where you actually get your energy from. Not from, like, caffeine or whatever. It's from the food you put in your bodies. So e3energycubes.com. All right, I have one more small case to make for the conspiracy of the NBA draft lottery. And we'll talk about what I think is the most overlooked facet of this NBA draft lottery. Not the number one pick, but another one that is going to be a problem in the West of the NBA pretty soon. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Welcome back to the Sean O'Connell Show. Hopefully you're all feeling a little bit better after the disappointment of yesterday evening's NBA draft lottery. Utah Jazz got pick number 5. Kristen Peak is going to join us in about 13 minutes to talk about what that means for the Utah Jazz. And maybe we'll get into the player that is actually available there and the Jazz are going to end up picking to put on their roster. There's also the possibility the Utah Jazz have a bunch of draft capital. They could move up. Definitely not to number 1, but what about number 2? Number 3, I think, is more accessible even than number 2 is. Is that a possibility? We'll talk about all that with Kristen Peak.
I do wonder real quick, OC, I know we wanted to talk about a different angle to this, but I do wonder because the Spurs used all that capital they had to get De'Aaron Fox, and it wasn't a ton, but they did give up some draft picks. They invested a lot in acquiring De'Aaron Fox, who is already a high-level point guard. I do wonder if the Spurs might, knowing that whoever has the number 2 pick wants the top point guard in the draft, Dylan Harper, I wonder if they might try to leverage that into, hey, give us an established star player, and we probably would be willing to trade this pick. Now, for the Jazz, that would mean you're going to have to be willing to give up Lauri Markkanen in order to get Dylan Harper. I'm not so sure how I feel about that.
Feels like
that might be something that looks worthwhile to Danny Ainge and Justin Zanuck and Will Hardy.
It feels a little too close to a net neutral for me. When you're talking about, an all-star caliber player in Lauri Markkanen, not an all-star last year, but all-star caliber player. You're gonna offload that and add someone you hope is eventually an all-star player, and that's
who's the only thing that maybe that you might go tips that might feel like it tips the scale in Harper's side of things is that he's much younger than Lauri Markkanen,
obviously,
and if you're convinced he's going to be a better pro than Lauri Markkanen, or at least the same caliber of pro player as Lauri Markkanen has been, that might be enough for you to be like, yeah, we will entertain the idea of trading Lauri Markkanen and whatever other capital we might need to get the number 2 pick so we can take Dylan Harper. So that I thought about that yesterday. Here's what I think is probably going to happen. The Spurs are probably going to be like, well, Dylan's 6'6", De'Aaron Fox is 6'5". Well, 2 big guards, we'll play them in the backcourt together.
Exactly. I think that would – look, if you're the Spurs and you have an opportunity to add another top talent to an already young team, knowing that it's going to take you probably another 2 years before you reach the fullness of your potential with Victor Wembanyama, et cetera, and De'Aaron Fox, and whoever you could potentially pick here. I mean, come on. But, maybe they're like, we can get something we like at 5 also, so we'll do that. You give us Lauri Markkanen and 5, and maybe you can have number 2. I don't know what the Jazz ideas are on trading up. We could get to that with Kristen Peak. It is an overlooked aspect of this draft, and we talked about it with Gordy, that Dylan Harper is going to be presumably in a Spurs uniform alongside those guys. That is nasty work.
We didn't even mention Stephon Castle, who was the Rookie of the Year, who looks like he's got a bright future ahead of him. He's also in that starting lineup.
So if you're the San Antonio Spurs, I mean, you were probably experiencing some heart palpitations. I started laughing out loud when they announced number 3, and I was like, is it going to be the Spurs? Because immediately my conspiracy mind went to, does the NBA weirdly love San Antonio? And now that Popovich is like stepping out of there, they're doing what they can to make sure that the Spurs stay relevant. That doesn't make sense from a market size, or I don't even think television ratings perspective. But in any case, they end up with number 2, which is not a bad place to be, especially in this year's draft. Let me give you one more small case here, James. This coming from one of our texters, and I always appreciate when people bring this stuff in. 9279. Okay. 2012, who got the number 1 pick? Do you remember?
Was that the Pelican or the Pelicans year with Anthony Davis?
That was.
Or was it the year before?
That was.
Okay. Yeah.
Do you know what they did in 2011 before they got that number 1 pick?
Yeah, they traded Chris Paul to the
where?
Clippers.
Okay, to L.A.
To
Los
L.A. Well,
Angeles.
first to the Lakers in the league. Then David Stern said, nope, that's not happening. We're voiding that. And ends up at the Clippers. Yeah,
Okay.
to L.A.
Okay. Do you know what happened? Same team, 2019, got the number 1 pick.
Oh.
Do you know what happened in 2018?
AD
Traded to
the Lakers.
Okay. So there's a trend here.
League does love Los Angeles. We know that.
Every 6 to 8 years, if a superstar gets traded to Los Angeles, then the team who trades that superstar to Los Angeles is awarded the number 1 pick in the following NBA draft lottery.
So all the Jazz got to do is trade a superstar to Los Angeles.
Exactly.
Oh, wait, they got to find one first.
Is Lowry
Then trade
Marketed enough of a superstar? Because the Lakers wanted him, right? The Lakers were in love with Lowry Marketed.
Maybe the Clippers would be like, yeah, we'll take Lowry off your hands.
The Warriors wanted him.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Miami wanted him too.
Where do you think the line of demarcation is when it comes to, like, this market is big enough? I think its storylines matter as much or more than the market size does.
Yeah.
Like the hometown hero thing, obviously it's better if you're talking about a big market.
Yeah.
But, like the NHL draft lottery, the Islanders got the number 1 pick with potentially a Long Island guy being their pick. If it were the Rangers and the kid grew up in Manhattan, that's a better story.
Yeah.
But it's not possible to make that. You can't manipulate it
And
aggressively.
I know it's like this. It's not in the city. It's not in New York City. It's Long Island, hence the Islanders. But with it being on Long Island,
yeah, it's
just like right next to New York City. Is that technically considered a small market in the NHL?
It's not,
I don't think
because
it is.
it's part of the same. Long Island is part of the New York City
Metro
television market
area, right?
Yeah, it's yes. I mean, everyone on Long Island is a Knicks fan.
I know it's like the Clippers and the Nets to the Knicks, the Clippers to the Lakers, but those teams are still big market teams. They're
Right.
They're looked at as small markets because they're
stepchildren.
because they're not the other team. Yeah.
So, if there is a market manipulation in favor of the large markets, is it like, do you have to be a top 10 market, you think? Because that would
probably
that would be Houston. The line would cut off at Houston.
Probably a top 10 market.
The top 10 metros for television markets, at least, and that's obviously what matters more than it's New York, L.A., Chicago, Philly. Guess who comes in at number 5?
Phoenix,
Dallas.
Oh, okay.
Who just got a manipulation in their favor. The Bay Area. Bay Area is number 6. Boston 7, Atlanta 8, DC 9, Houston 10.
Atlanta, whose fans think of themselves as a picked on small market, eighth television market in the country.
Atlanta, man, we talked about this on the show.
Braves
before.
fans feel that way too. It's like, oh, we're this plucky small market team, top 10 media market in the country, millions of people, a destination. They call it Black Hollywood, a destination for African Americans. Among other people.
I'm telling you, the Hawks are doing something dead wrong.
Yes.
In that they are not able to get the biggest free agent signings in the NBA. Atlanta is, like you said, it is a hub of African-American culture. It is arguably the hub of African-American culture,
which
in the United States
has a very strong influence on the NBA. Obviously.
It is obviously. It's
an
85% black league, I think, at this point.
Yeah, and enough, and not just by sheer numbers, because of those numbers, and the players have been able to leverage that being the way you promote the league too, which is, I think, has been a really good thing for the league to do that. But it's like, why in that environment, like you brought up just now and you brought up before on the show, why in that environment has Atlanta not had just a dynasty or just a really good teams year after year after year? It's wild.
Do you know where Salt Lake City falls in the television market rankings?
In this the league rankings or the
Television
television
rankings.
markets
Market
in the
rankings.
30s, right?
33.
33, yeah. Right ahead or right behind San Antonio, if I'm not mistaken.
We are a spot ahead of Cincinnati and a spot behind Columbus, 4 spots ahead of San Antonio.
Okay, yeah. Right there in two of the biggest cities, right there with two of the biggest cities in Ohio.
There's a lot on here that I wouldn't like. I think that people could probably rattle off the top 10 pretty easy with very little deviation. And the top 15 even, Detroit, Phoenix, Tampa is a bit of a surprise outlier.
Yeah.
Maybe. Seattle, Minneapolis, Miami. Then you get into Cleveland. Denver's 18. There's a couple on here, though, like we failed to recognize how big Sacramento is. At least I do. That's number 20. St. Louis is number 21. Charlotte's number 24. Your Colts, Indianapolis, 25. Raleigh, Durham, number 27. All these ranked higher, obviously, than Salt Lake City. Hartford and New Haven, Connecticut.
Oh.
Ranked higher than Salt Lake City.
I wouldn't have guessed that.
At number 30.
That's why Hartford had an NHL team at one point. Okay.
Yeah. Go Whalers. If you restored that franchise, do you think you'd be allowed to call it the Whalers? Because whaling is so frowned upon now.
I don't know about that.
I think that everyone would just be like, no, we don't want PETA talking to
How about
us.
the whales?
Yeah. Hartford Whalers, people who used to kill whales. Nope, now the whales are taking over, baby.
Or just to piss a bunch of fans off, the whale.
Everyone's question mark, singular whale. That's like the mammoth are getting right now. All right. NBA draft analyst Kristen Peak is going to join us in 3 minutes. We're going to talk about, you guessed it, last night's NBA draft lottery and what the fallout means for the Utah Jazz. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. Time now to talk a little NBA draft after we got the results of the draft lottery on the Sean O'Connell Show. Last night, Utah Jazz tied for top odds to get pick number 1, instead get pick number 5, to the disappointment and chagrin of most Jazz fans. Dallas Mavericks get pick number 1, 1.7% chance that's where they would land. Of course, they get it, and my conspiracy mind gets ignited and ramped all the way to the top. James has been walking me back off that. But we'll talk a little bit about that, mostly about the players in this draft. Kristen Peak joins us, NBA draft analyst, color analyst as well on NBA basketball and on the NBA app at NBA TV. You can find her a lot of different places. It's KRYSTN STENPEK. Kristen Peak, welcome. How are you?
I mean, better than Jazz fans, I'm sure. How are you?
Look, I'm coping by convincing myself that the NBA draft lottery is completely rigged and that this was all compensation for sending Luka to L.A., which was, of course, part of the grand plan that the Lakers would have a star in place even when LeBron retires. And it makes me feel even worse, not better. So it's not a good coping mechanism.
It is. It was quite a night last night. I mean, having, a 1.8% chance. And for those that are wondering, how the draft lottery works, there's 4 ping pong ball combinations. There are 4 ping pong balls in the room, and there's 1,001 different combinations that each team gets. So if you are in that 14% chance, you get 140 different possible combinations, all the way down to, if you're 1.8, you get 18 combinations out of 1,001. And one of those 18 that the Dallas Mavericks had just happened to be the 4 numbers for the number 1 pick. So you can call it conspiracy theory. You can call it just rotten luck. The same thing happened with the Chicago Bulls back when they got the number 1 pick and drafted Chicago native Derrick Rose. And so sometimes, the basketball gods just aren't in your favor. And for, the Jazz, Hornets, and Wizards that went in with high hopes, I mean, it just wasn't their night.
And the basketball gods seem to smile on teams who trade stars to L.A. squads.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
Or that they should. But look, I'm kind of tongue-in-cheek, but I'm also not. There's not a way to manipulate this thing, right? This method was introduced to prevent these conversations.
Correct. I don't know how. I've never been in the room, but for when I talk to media people that have, it would be virtually impossible to manipulate it. But I don't know.
All right, that's fair. Okay, so if you're the Utah Jazz, you get number 5, and
yep.
this is a really good draft. This is a talent-heavy draft, especially
draft.
At the top.
Yes.
Is 5 a good enough place, or do you have to try to move up to 2, 3, 4?
I would see there's different tiers, right? So I would say the first tier is 1. You're not going to like this, 1 through 4, with Cooper Flag, Dylan Harper, Ace Bailey, and VJ Edgecombe. But then, however, it gets really interesting. People always ask, when does the draft start? And I think it could start at 5. So when you're looking at 5 and, their option, is it, a true floor general that can manipulate the PNR like Jeremiah Fears? Is it someone like Colin Knippel, who was Cooper Flag's teammate and can shoot the living you-know-what out of the ball? There's a lot of options that start at 5. So, it's not, is it a horrible spot to be in? No, but you're not going to get that surefire 1 through 4, players that we've been hearing about all season long.
I spent some time on the show yesterday pre-assuring myself, like, okay, if it doesn't happen, number 1, pre-assuring, I just invented a word, everyone, you're welcome. Like, the Jazz have, they've drafted good players in the second round. They've drafted good players further down in the first round. Like the best player on the planet right now was not a number 1 overall pick. You find these diamonds in the rough in the NBA draft, and you're, involved with scouting everybody, and you're involved with the combine happening right now. Is there somebody that you think that teams are not talking about in this top tier or even these top 2 tiers that you could see becoming a surprise star player, a Donovan Mitchell type, which, of course, the Jazz had and didn't keep?
I mean, someone that nobody's talking about until maybe this week was former Washington State guard Cedric Coward. Coward, 6'6", 7'1" wingspan. He only played a handful of games this season after he hurt his shoulder and he was forced to sit out the rest of the season. But now he's preliminary transferring to Duke. But I just saw him hit the court. He had a 38.5 max vert, and he shot the ball, the three ball, particularly very, very well, off the dribble and also in catch and shoot situations. So when we look at buzzy names coming out of this draft combine, similar to when we saw, Jalen Williams, when he shot up into the lottery, I think Coward is someone that's Cedric Coward is a name that we're going to start hearing a lot more of.
Interesting. So maybe something for Jazz fans to keep an eye on. The Minnesota Timberwolves pick also belongs to the Utah Jazz, as you're well aware. So you're going to get 2 bites at the apple in this first round. And while everyone has talked about those top 5, top 6 talents, there's a lot less conversation about what's available down when you're getting into the 20s. Are we still talking about immediate starters down there?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think there's some plug-and-play guys in the 20s that can come in and log meaningful minutes right away. I think Nick Clifford is another player out of Colorado State that I've been really high on. Another 6'7", walking triple-double, a 4-year player who tested the waters last year, was going to be a fringe second rounder and decided to go back, work on his handle, work on his body, and he's now going to be a first-round pick. So when you're looking at value, especially in the 20s and the back half of this draft class, you're going to get older and more experienced, more plug-and-play guys. Walter Clayton Jr., remember, he led the Florida Gators to a national title. He's here. Is looking like Steph Curry in the tournament, a little undersized, but he's going to be someone that can contribute right away. So there is a lot of value, and that's what you get. I mean, if there's any consolation prize to any Jazz fans, that this is a very deep draft. There's a lot of talent. And now it's just up to, the teams to go out and find their player.
Kristen Peak, NBA draft analyst, my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking about the fallout from last night's NBA draft lottery, where the Jazz end up with pick number 5. Dallas Mavericks get number 1. I thought because of, the reaction here locally especially, but then the surprise of it being Dallas, one of the most underrated storylines here for me is that the San Antonio Spurs are going to get pick number 2 and add to the embarrassment of young riches that they already have. Is it Dylan Harper, obviously, for them, you think?
They get 2 and 14, so they get 2 lottery picks. Remember that. And Dylan Harper is the second best prospect. Do I think they keep that pick? I don't know. I mean, it's funny. I'm here at the combine. I just saw Brian Wright walk by, so I'm like, I don't want to talk too loudly, the GM for the Spurs. But do I think they're going to take phone calls from Milwaukee and try to package something to maybe get Giannis? Absolutely. Do I think Dallas is going to pick up the phone for Milwaukee? Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of conversations had, but the fact that Dylan, there's so many other teams that love him as a cornerstone piece to their franchise, and you say the rich get richer. The Spurs don't necessarily need him. Steph Castle was just Rookie of the Year, pairing with Victor Wembanyama, a generational type talent. They're just adding De'Aaron Fox. They don't need Dylan Harper necessarily. And so I think they're going to be they're going to be the team that's going to be taking the most phone calls with the value that they have with Dylan Harper sitting at 2.
Have we learned now that tanking is not worth it for NBA franchises? I mean, locally it feels like we learned that lesson the hard way. Jazz fans have expressed their angst and their distrust and their distaste for this whole process with the results that we got last night. But the fact of the matter is that the team with the highest odds, the team with the worst record in the NBA since they made the change in 2019, has not been rewarded with the number 1 overall pick. So can we say that it's not worth tanking?
Listen, you can and you can. I mean, Adam Silver has made it very clear that he does not want to see teams tank. But what did the Mavericks do? What was it a few years ago where they were going to lose their lottery pick if they won X amount of games, and so they sat their entire starting lineup for the last 15 games of the season, and they ended up keeping it and drafting Derek Lively, and I think Mark Cuban was fined $500,000. Like, there are little games and ways to manipulate the system, but the ping pong balls are like proving not to be in the favor of the teams with the worst records. We saw it with Detroit, after they got Kay Cunningham, and they had the worst record for 3 years and ended up at 5. And so, there is no sure thing. And I don't know if we've got to switch something up to make it a little more fair for the teams that are looking to rebuild and build from the ground up, instead of, like you said, making the rich richer and rewarding the teams with a 1.8% chance in landing the number 1 pick.
I think we mentioned already, Kristen's at the NBA Combine, the Scouting Combine. Obviously, the NFL Scouting Combine is a bigger television event and something that even the casual fan likes to evaluate and make themselves an expert on. We've seen trends emerge and go away and emerge again with the NFL Scouting Combine. What are GMs, what are teams right now looking for in the NBA Scouting Combine? Like you mentioned vertical, right? And I know they're out there on the floor shooting. What is the thing that, like the 40-yard dash of the NBA Scouting Combine?
It's so stupid. It's called a 3/4 quarters or court sprint. And there hasn't been any wow moment, but last year I took a video of Zach Edey running it, and everyone thought he was the guy from Happy Gilmore running. No, I believe that belongs to Mr. Gilmore, the big guy. So that was the big thing that came out of the 3/4 sprint. But no, I think when you look at what teams are looking for and trying to evaluate, they're shooting from the 3-point line, the NBA 3-point line. So, and they're doing catch and shoot. They're doing this thing called the star drill, where it's a continuous run for, I think, a minute and a half, and you have to hit every 5 spots. And so it's more of a conditioning drill. And can you still shoot the 3? And every player does it. If you're a center, if you're 7'2", if you're Danny Wolf, you're still doing the 3-point star drill. So it's that you're learning little things like Liam McNeely from UConn had the fastest shuttle run. He beat out Ace Bailey. And so, you're learning about quickness and little things like that. Poor Kaman Malawach, the 7'2" center, he was doing this drill where you sprint, slide, backpedal, slide, and he had to do it 6 times because he kept knocking down the cones. And so that I attribute more to nerves. But there are little things that you can learn from this, just from explosive power, how a player's body looks, and how well they're shooting on the floor.
How have you looked at next year's draft already? I don't know, what
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
How do you compare next year's draft to this year's draft?
Next year is deeper in terms of one-and-done talent. When you're looking at top-heavy, I would say it's more of a 1 to 7. So you got AJ DeBonta, who everyone knows is going to BYU. Then you've got Darren Peterson going to Kansas. And then Cameron Boozer headed to Duke, Nate Ament, who'll be at Tennessee, Michael Brown, the guard, going to Louisville, Chris Sinak in Houston. So there is a lot. If there's any silver lining, sorry, Utah fans, just wait another year. I promise. There's so much coming. There's so much coming down the pipeline next season as well.
Yes. Jazz fans looking forward to pick number 5 again next year. It's going to be fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time today and your insight. Enjoy the rest of that process, and hopefully we'll get you on again soon.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks for having me.
Kristen Peak, great stuff coming at us from the NBA Scouting Combine. It sounds like in the gym, watching shots and drills and all that stuff happening. So big thanks to Kristen Peak. Well done, James, getting her on. And, there are silver linings to all of it. Cooper Flagg's not the only good player in this draft. And in fact, statistically, historically speaking, he's not even going to be the only great player that emerges from this NBA draft.
Yeah, Gordy likes to remind us every year as we get closer and closer to the draft, closer and closer to the end of the regular season, even, that Jimmy Butler was the 30th pick overall, and he's Jimmy Butler, right? Nikola Jokic was a second-round pick. Donovan Mitchell was a late lottery pick the Jazz traded up to get. Rudy Gobert was a number 27 pick. John Stockton and Karl Malone were late lottery or even outside the lottery at the time. So you can identify good scouting departments and good scouting departments do identify those kinds of gems that aren't the number one overall pick, and we'll see if the Jazz scouting department and their front office staff can do that again this year.
You know what, though? Doesn't matter. We're a hockey town now. After last night, and more importantly, after the last 2 weeks, because the NHL draft lottery, the hockey gods smiled upon Salt Lake City, and the NBA gods are just like, we don't like that place.
That's probably a healthier way to cope with things than what you shared with Kristen about the way you're coping with the NBA draft.
No, it's better to blame your bad luck on some sort of sinister force working against you. You should do that in everything in life.
Fair enough.
You know what I mean?
OC.
You get a flat tire, it's not because randomly, accidentally, someone left a screw or a nail on the curb. It's more likely that there's some evil leprechaun that hammered that thing into your tire deliberately.
Yeah, some kind of final destination demon that's out to get you.
See?
Type thing.
Exactly,
Yeah.
James. Do you know what the probability of being an all-star at pick number 5 is, percentage-wise?
I do not, off the top of my head.
How could you not know that off the
Shockingly.
top of your head, James? The number 1 overall pick has roughly a 60% chance of becoming an all-star.
So, okay, 40% chance of not.
Yeah, you're right. At pick number 5, you're looking at a 28% chance that person becomes an all-star.
Okay, so only about half as much.
Yeah.
That's not that big of a drop
Not that big of a drop. You didn't want number 1 pick anyway. That's the point I'm trying to bring people home with. Okay? Didn't want it, don't need it, don't like it, not interested in it.
Never want it ever. Oh,
Cooper
wait,
Flag.
I better not put that out there. We do. I would be okay with. I would be okay with it one time.
All right. We talked about it a little bit with Gordy Chiesa. The number 1 storyline from last night, because of the whole draft lottery thing, is, of course, Dallas being helped out by the league office. Otherwise, one of the best players in the game being out for a year would be the number 1 story. Let's talk about what this means for the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum looks like he tore his Achilles. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. Jeff Triplett's going to join us to start hour number 3, former NFL official. We'll talk about officiating, the place of technology in calling games at the highest level in sports, especially in football, which has become America's real pastime. That's coming up in about 6 minutes here on the Sean O'Connell Show. Live Night Events presenting 2025 Granary Live Concert Series is powered by Nightingale College and Murdoch Hyundai, Utah's #1 Hyundai dealer. Outdoor concerts in the heart of downtown Salt Lake City, the Granary District. Details at ESPN700sports.com. The Jason Tatum injury, James, will be how devastating for the Celtics. Obviously, they're on the brink of elimination this year. I don't think even him playing in this series was going to slow the Knicks down enough. For next year, he's going to miss a whole year. How bad is this going to be for the Celtics?
Yeah, it's a sucky thing for the Celtics for sure, and I think it is for the league too, because we're talking about one of the best young talents, one of the best talents, period, regardless of age, in the league, and that for basketball fans, that's rough. That's rough that we're going to miss out on that another year. In addition to a guy that we love here locally, who's not quite at the same level anymore, of Jason Tatum, but Damian Lillard, another guy who we're gonna miss. We're gonna miss a year of watching two guys with Achilles tears. So, yeah, it's never a good thing when a star player, a top 10 player, some people think top 5 player in the league, certainly an All NBA talent perennially, is gonna miss time. And so it's certainly bad for the Celtics. I don't see a way that they come back to beat the Knicks down 3-1 and now missing their best player. That being said, Celtics might be the deepest team in the league, OC. So, and the Knicks famously, Tom Thibodeau wears his star players down to the point where they get injured in the playoffs quite often, or at the very least, they're just always tired. So it's not completely out of the realm of possibility that the Celtics could come back and win this series. But I still will say I don't see how they do that. Other than maybe the only way they do that is if Jalen Brunson or Karl Anthony Towns goes down too with injury, which we hope doesn't happen at all.
3 of these series are 3-1 right now.
Yeah.
Warriors have a less than 100% Steph Curry.
And right now looks like probably won't play Game 5.
The Cavaliers have a less than 100% Donovan Mitchell.
Still, I believe, questionable for Game 5. If that's been updated, texters, go ahead and text us 877-353-0700. I'll also look it up here in a second.
And the Celtics are now without Jason Tatum. So yeah. I don't think we're going to get any historic comebacks here.
No. And the Cavs we talked about before, even besides Donovan Mitchell, their other 2 star players and a few other key players are playing less than 100% too. So that feels, even if Donovan plays on his injured, is it an ankle injury? Certainly lower body injury.
It's an ankle. An
ankle injury. Even if he attempts to play on that, you're talking about 4 of their 5 or 6 best players all under 100%, including their best one. So yeah, the Cavs one feels like the least likely of a team to come back, unfortunately for them and for Donovan Mitchell. But yeah, I don't see how the T-Wolves and the Knicks and the Pacers give up a comeback up 3-1 with their opponents having those kind of injuries.
I mean, it would be epic, horrific, legendary collapse level stuff if any of these franchises allowed the opposition to come back with a limited or completely absent best player. You can't do it. So I think you're going to get the favorites, the leaders winning in 3 of the 4 series here, and very intrigued to see how things work out with the Nuggets. But we'll have time to talk about that as the week progresses. All right, a fun little treat coming next. Former NFL referee, official, Jeff Triplett is going to join us. We'll talk about the influx of technology and its impact on the game, obviously just how difficult that job is, and a referee shortage that may or may not affect the way things are done in college and professional football moving forward. Sean O'Connell Show continues with Hour 3 next. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.
Dustin Colquitt on to punt. Colquitt goes down, and there is a flag on the play. This is going to be a huge flag thrown by the referee, Jeff Triplett, as Brendan Trawick made contact with the punter. Here comes Jeff Triplett.
There are two fouls on the play. Running into the kicker, number 41 of the kicking team. The Prince in the defense. Personal foul, unnecessary roughness on the kicking team, number 40. By rule, those penalties all set. Replay, fourth down.
Huge break for the Titans with the offsetting penalties.
That sound courtesy of ESPN and the NFL is our next guest, Jeff Triplett, announcing some penalties from a playoff game, wild card matchup between the Titans and the Chiefs. He served as an NFL official for 22 years. You saw him as a rules analyst on ESPN. You've heard him doing interviews like this one, and he's kind enough to give us some time. Jeff Triplett, welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show. How are you, sir?
I'm doing great, Sean. Thanks for having me.
I'm very excited to pick your brain about all things officiating because, you know, we don't have this opportunity very often, and I guess we should be honest, we don't seek the opportunity as often as we should to speak with officials. Spend a lot of time complaining about them, I suppose, but we don't always get the insight from the officials themselves. I'll start here. When a call changes the outcome of a big game, or it's perceived that a call changes the outcome of a big game, what's it like being in the locker room with the crew as you walk off the field? Sometimes as fans are booing and maybe throwing stuff. What is the atmosphere like when a call, right or wrong, unfortunate or not, ends up affecting the outcome of a game? How does that affect the crew?
Well, again, it probably depends. I think we kind of look at calls probably not affecting the outcome of the game, but you absolutely understand that there is that opportunity to do that. Hang on one second. I got somebody banging on my door here.
Oh. Tell whoever that is that you're busy, Jeff.
Yeah. All right. No, but I'd say the crew understands what a call might do, and I would just say that more often than not, the crew's very supportive of the individual that's made the call, and because most of the time the call was right. I mean, more often than not, and it's like really way to step up to make a tough call at the end of a game that may have affected the outcome, but you really want to get the call right.
And you know, now we as fans get to see in slow motion from multiple angles how correct or incorrect a call is. And we have to admit in our heart of hearts, even those of us who like to blame things on referees, that most of the time the crews do get things right, that more often than not, the call on the field seems to stand. When, you know, your career kind of spanned the time when replay was introduced and became ubiquitous and widely used. How was that to go through that phase of technology now being added as I guess an insurance policy or as an addition to the job that you were already doing?
Well, replay came back in 1999, the first year that I became a crew chief, and I would tell you the biggest thing that I think we see about replay today is sometimes we want replay we want the call and officials to be perfect. And just like players, we're not always perfect, and neither is replay. There are going to be times when you just can't see or can't tell, even from replay. That's one. I think the second thing is we probably overutilize replay in many situations, and I think you can look at the college game as a particular example. They review almost anything that has any question whatsoever. It just slows down the game. I think the NFL works really hard at trying to make sure we don't interrupt the flow of the game by just looking at every play. I kind of relate it a little bit to like baseball in some situations of, look, we just need to let the game move on. Fans want to enjoy the flow of the game and enjoy their players playing and seeing them perform rather than sitting around watching replays.
I watched they've introduced it in minor league baseball where you can challenge basically every pitch now, and it definitely does interrupt the flow a little bit. Now they've done a great job of making sure that they speed that process up as fast as they can. But it definitely does interrupt the flow. In baseball, certainly, we've seen it, some of these reviews that go on for several minutes in football. And, again, this is usually us evaluating from the fan perspective. But I imagine that, like a player, you get in a groove when you're an official in a game. Does that interruption, if you're not the one doing, under the hood doing the replay review, does that affect the rest of the crew and kind of maybe take them out of that rhythm, take them out of that groove?
Well, it probably takes the official that made the call that we are probably reviewing. They are always wanting to know, what did you see? What did you see in the replay? We'll obviously get to review it later. So I think, again, replay is great. As folks said, it was supposed to be there to correct the obvious error. And obviously, we're going to have an obvious error every now and then. And that's where replay should come into play. But getting it down to the infinitesimal of whether the ball was 1 inch short of the goal line or not 1 inch short of the goal line, the human eye can't see it that quick. And the same way with players, we complain about the quarterback. Well, where was he throwing that ball? No one ever said the receiver ran a route that wasn't what the quarterback anticipated him running. So, all those things come into play with replay, and I'm a proponent of replay, but only to fix the obvious errors, not the things that are just so finite and so close that it's so hard to tell.
Do you like the chain gang? There's been a lot of conversation about how that seems to be an archaic way to measure our first downs and to figure out whether or not it was a first down, and spotting the ball is obviously a huge part of that. And you can use technology to spot the ball, but it's really interesting that, we got thinking computers now, Jeff. We got AI taking over, and they're going to be our machine overlords soon. And it's just like, was that 10 yards? Hold on. Let's get the chain out to see.
There's a lot to be said about just using old times kind of thing. It's much like running the clock in these situations. Now we're getting down to the infinitesimal points on the clock, and again, I think a lot of us used to remember that back I'll call it in the olden days when we didn't get that finite about it. I guess one of the things that I would comment on is that the game is played by humans. It's not a video game. It's real live, and it's real live action. And we ought not to take that away from the game itself by imposing too much artificial kind of gadgets with it. That's my personal opinion.
Jeff Triplett's my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, former NFL official, giving us some insight on all things officiating in the sports world. This one I've never asked. How do you decide, how does a crew decide who's going to be, or an individual, whether I want to be an umpire, whether I want to be a field judge, a back judge? Like, how do you go through that process of deciding where you want to be during the games?
Well, it usually starts out very early in your career where you start out. Almost no one starts out as crew chief, but you start wherever. If you played the game, folks that are. I was a receiver in high school, so I kind of looked at playing deep and those kind of things. Folks that were linemen tend to be on the line of scrimmage or umpires in that kind of situation. So you kind of start there, and you start developing talents around doing that, and you kind of end up staying there unless ultimately you move to a crew chief. And crew chiefs are really folks that are more often than not probably some of the best rules people on a crew, and can manage people in events and organizations. And some guys and ladies do not want to be crew chiefs. I have really great officials on crews over the years, superb, excellent, but had no desire whatsoever to be a crew chief. Just didn't want the hassle of having to be responsible for everybody else.
Who was best from a player or coach's standpoint of I don't know, getting under your skin and campaigning, and because we see it all the time. Doesn't even matter if it was a significant call or not. Coach pulls off the headset. He's got a comment for the official. He's talking to the guy in the striped shirt, and it just goes on and on and on. Some coaches don't do a lot of it. Some coaches, it's like they start before the whistle and they continue through the whole game. So I don't know if it's good to ask if it's the best or the worst, but whoever was the most significant effort in getting under your skin or communicating with you through the game.
Now, I would tell you, rarely did coaches get under your skin. You really like the coaches that really controlled their players and knew the game and knew what it was you were trying to do out there and work with you. I mean, folks like Bill Parcells and even Coach Belichick, Andy Reid. I mean, I can go down the list of coaches who really understand the game and what's taking place out there. And when they're asking you a question, it's like, I need to understand what we did wrong there, because they're trying to fix things as the game goes on. Those are the folks you really love working for. And it's just there are a lot of those coaches out there. I'd say you probably had more challenges with some assistant coaches every now and then, and you can't remember them all because they move around so much. But the head coaches are, by and large, I'd say 95% of them are really great people and really football people when it came down to it. What
about players? Because players will have a thing or two to say also. How did your relationship with players evolve throughout your years in the NFL?
I'd say you got that once you kind of establish yourself after several years, folks understand, and I guess you kind of develop a certain reputation. Folks on our crew, and I had one of my guys who worked with me for, 13 years, Steve Freeman, played in the league for 11, 12 years with the Buffalo Bills as defensive back. We just didn't take a lot of crap off of folks. And coaches and players understood that. And they understood that we understood the game. And, if you want to go sideways on something, we can give it back to you in that regard. So I'd say it's the quarterbacks from my standpoint as a referee. You got to know the quarterback, all the quarterbacks really well, because they're looking to you for protection, and they know if you're there and you know who they are. They know that at least in our game, I always erred on the side of making sure that the quarterback was protected, because it tended to create less problems if that was the case.
What's the hardest call to make in a football game? Like illegal procedure penalties and an offsides, a false start, whatever. We can watch that even without a replay, say, oh, yeah, he moved before the snap or whatever. But things like holding, the hand positioning on a hold or something like that, maybe a little bit more nuanced. So when you're out there on the field, what's the hardest call to make and know that with full confidence you got it right?
I would say that the pass for a referee, for a white hat, is probably the pass fumble call. They are so good at tipping the ball just in a quarterback's hand, and was the hand moving forward with full control of the football. I kind of tell folks, they say, how do you get those right? And I say, if you ever read the book by Ted Williams talked about the concentration that he had, that he could see the baseball leaving the pitcher's hand and start to see the seams on the baseball. I tell fans occasionally, I said, if you ever been in an auto accident, and when right before the impact of an auto accident, what happens? Everything kind of slows down and you see things in slow motion. If you're really concentrating, you see plays in slow motion, and that's how we get them right. When you really are concentrating in the game, things slow down for you. They don't speed up. The faster they go, the slower it gets in your mind and what you see. So that's where the really good officials come into play. They're concentrating and blocking everything else out except what they're supposed to be watching.
Jeff Triplett, my guest for a couple more minutes here, former NFL official, 22 years at the top level of the sport. There's a referee shortage going on. We've got, by the way, you can sign up if you want to try refereeing, highschoolofficials.com. Why do you think this is the case, Jeff?
I think two things. One is that folks obviously want to get there really quickly, but I would tell you that what we understand from being a member of the National Association of Sports Officials, which is a international organization of officials of all sports, but as young folks come into the game, fans and young coaches can be way too abusive to officials. And the young folks just don't want to put up with it. I mean, when you've got in youth sports, teenage kids out there working soccer games or Little League baseball or Pop Warner football, or even young folks working high school games. I mean, look, they're not They're not at the top level. They're going to make mistakes, just like we all made mistakes when we started playing whatever sport we were going to play in. So if we can get fans to be more accommodating of younger officials, especially in the youth sports, we need to support them, because if we don't have enough officials, you're not going to play some of these contests, and kids aren't going to get that opportunity to do it. So I just urge all of us, is whether we're fans or coaches or just or parents, look, the officials are doing the best that they can at the level that they're at, and some of them are going to get to be really, really good. I mean, I can remember when I started out as working Pop Warner and all those kind of things, and it's an interesting story. A young man that I officiated his Pop Warner games back in those days, years later, when I was about ready to come off the field in the NFL, he comes up to me and says, "Hey, Jeff, I remember you. You worked my Pop Warner game that I was with the Boys and Girls Club. I worked in Winston-Salem at the time." He says, "You worked my game. So great to see you again."
No way.
Those are the kind of things that you remember over and over again.
That's pretty cool. What a full circle moment.
Exactly.
All right, big picture question for you, because you're not around the game of football for as long as you were without being a real dyed-in-the-wool football fan. You're a former Demon Deacon, right?
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, so there's this have and have-nots conversation happening with college football very specifically, where, you're Oregon, you're Texas, Ohio State, Georgia, these teams with, unlimited bank accounts and big-time television contracts and all that stuff, they're seemingly more able to compete at the highest level with the new rules and recruiting and all that kind of thing. And then there's, we're the flagship home of the Utah Utes at kind of a mid-level or a mid-major level of funding, at least. Wake Forest, I think, probably is in a similar situation. Can schools that are not quite at that top tier financially with their football programs, can they continue to compete as these rule changes seem to benefit the big boys or the rich getting richer more often?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting, the settlement that is about to come about with, as your fans are probably all aware, the House settlement that is going to come. Is probably, Judge Wilkins is probably going to figure out how to make this happen. When that happens, there's going to become a cap on what schools can spend on NIL and and kind of paying for the players and those kinds of things. It's going to level the playing field so that the big boys, as you just talked about, the Texases and the Alabamas and the Georgias and the others in the Big Ten, the Ohio States and UCLA, Southern Cal, they're all going to have a cap of what they can spend on certain things. So I think it's going to help equalize some of the playing field among folks. As it is right now, it's pretty wide open. So Wake Forest is the smallest Division I major college football playing institution in the NCAA. We see this as a real opportunity for us to continue to compete at the highest level, and we've made that commitment. So we're going to be there. And if the other boys are capped, then we believe that we can get our student athletes. Folks want to come to Wake Forest to play for our new coach out there.
All right, before I let you go, in the sports broadcasting world, I do some work announcing fights. I've worked on football. I got a chance to do basketball this year. I'm like, I could do any sport, I think, as an announcer. What about as an official? I mean, obviously you were at the very, very highest level with football. What other sport could you put on a striped shirt and go out there and do a good job with right now?
Well, I started out in basketball and I worked baseball. So during my collegiate days and right after I graduated, I did all three sports. I ultimately gave up baseball first and then basketball, basically because of work commitments that I just couldn't. I couldn't get off all the days that folks wanted me to work because I was working back during my collegiate days. I worked every day in all sports, so at any level. So I think I could still get back out there and probably do a baseball game, and I could still get up and down the basketball court. I still work out and all those kind of things. So yeah. I would also tell you, I'd love to get back. I could probably do volleyball today because they stand still. So that's a good one.
You were behind the plate umpire, Jeff?
Oh yeah, yep. I worked behind the plate and on the bases. So.
How big was your strike zone? Were you keep it tight? Were you generous with that strike zone? Come on.
Well, to be honest with you, I told the hitters out there, you need to get that bat off your shoulder and swing it. So
all right. I
was probably more generous to the pitchers than was necessary.
All right. I like that. I appreciate your time and your insight today, man. Thank you so much. Really fascinating conversation for me. Appreciate you.
Thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
Jeff Triplett, former NFL official, and sounds like he dabbled in basketball and baseball as well. If you're going to be a baseball umpire, you got to have a good strike call, especially when you're punching somebody out on strike three. You know what I mean? I spent some time officiating.
A little chainsaw motion or something, yeah.
I umpired baseball, Little League baseball back in the day, James. It was, I think, probably my first actual paying job out of my house. Because you could be, if I'm not mistaken, you could be 12 and do not T-ball, but the very first coach pitch. You know what I mean? 6-year-olds. Which I don't know why you need an umpire for that.
Yeah. Or machine pitch. That was the lowest level Little League in St. George. You have to.
Can you imagine being the behind the plate umpire for machine pitch? Kid just watches it go through. You're like, strike. It's a machine, kid. It always throws a strike.
You should probably swing. You're calling out or safe at home.
Yeah.
That's why you're out there in those kind of situations.
I'll tell you what, man. When I think I was 12 when I started, and it was down at Bear Park in Sandy. Shout out Bear Park to anyone who's in God's country, Sandy, Utah. And we were on there's two baseball fields. There was the small field for the little kids. There was the bigger field. You got the slightly older kids, like the 8 and 9-year-olds. The players were pitching at that point over there, and there was the snack shack. And you'd go to the snack shack. You'd get your big pad that you held in front of yourself, right? It was that kind of umpire.
Yeah.
You get the catcher's mask that you would put on, and then they would give you a hot dog or a hamburger. That would be your meal, and a drink. And I think I made $6 for the little kids games and like $10 for the bigger kids games. And
it's good money for a 12-year-old.
You felt like you were living large, man. Free food and money.
And you're basically watching baseball?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And you got to talk trash to adults when they started getting lippy?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So can you relate to what Jeff was saying about fans, parents, coaches being a little bit too harsh on young officials?
Yes, absolutely. And I was, like, I'm a pretty cocky, arrogant person now. I was the same way when I was a little 12, 13-year-old turd.
You were like the guy he talked about on his NFL – Jeff talked about on his NFL crew that played for the Bills that gave it back to the players.
Yes.
Gave it back to the hecklers.
I was the worst. Parents probably could not stand me because I was not deferential at all, especially in that position of power.
Yeah.
I was a nightmare when I was that age. And I kind of want to throw out names. I remember the names of certain players and their parents, and I could tell you the worst dad. I still remember his last name. I never knew his first name, but I still remember his last name.
Mr. So-and-so.
He's an attorney. And I assume he's still an attorney, although he's got to be in his 60s now. And I want to throw his name out, but I'm not going to, because I would like to have that guy call in and see if he remembered being an absolute insufferable turd to a 12-year-old umpire.
Yeah. So to pull people behind the curtain a little bit. You've heard if you're a regular listener, you've heard that PSA that's been running about the high school officials shortage. Youth sports official shortage, and encouraging people to consider becoming a ref. And I worked for Jeff at a software company that officials use, and if you're a ref, you know what it is. And he was the CEO of the company, so we've been hearing those PSAs and went, you know what, we should have some people on to talk about this, because as cheesy as it sounds, it's absolute. The messaging in there is absolutely right, and Jeff echoed it. If we don't have refs, we don't have sports.
So, James, let me ask you this. Why did we have Jeff on right after the rivalry game?
I know, we needed that too. We're gonna have to utilize that more.
He's gonna have to be our rules analyst right after.
I hadn't talked to him in years, and I didn't know that I actually had his phone number until recently. I'm like, oh, I actually have his number. So we're gonna try to utilize him a lot more when we have some controversial calls.
Oh my gosh, we can clip him the video and send him the call and just have him come on 5 minutes at a time and just be like, "That was the right call. Quit crying." Or maybe he'll feed the fires. Fan the flames. That's the term I'm looking for.
But yeah, highschoolofficials.com is the website if you're interested in becoming a ref and kind of helping out. Because, again, we don't have refs. We don't have youth sports, right? So it's a small way of making sure we continue to have youth sports. And if we don't have youth sports, then it's really hard for people to become professionals in sports, right? So, we'll be inviting some more high school refs, not near as big a name as Jeff Triplett, but on the show throughout the summer to kind of talk about this as we get closer to football season.
Big thanks to Jeff. Well done, James, getting him on. ESPN 792.1 FM, proud to announce Matt Rife coming to the Utah First Credit Union Amphitheater on June 6th. You can listen to The Drive with Spence Checketts this week for your chance to win a pair of tickets. ESPN700sports.com for more info and for ticket links. Can I win those tickets if I listen to The Drive? Because Matt Rife is funny. Stand-up comedian, does a lot of crowd work.
Maybe if someone else who has access to our text line, if you text that in, maybe if someone else that doesn't recognize your number, maybe that's the first texter.
How much?
Better give him the tickets.
How much Wild 'N Out have you watched in your life, James?
Not much.
You know the show
I do know the show you're talking about. Nick Cannon's
Wild 'N Out.
Yeah,
I think that's where Matt Rife got his big break on Wild 'N Out. What a show that is! That's one of two shows. When I'm on the road and I'm doing like my notes for fights, preparing in the hotel room, reviewing things, I turn on MTV for the background noise and Ridiculousness, which is on 24 hours a day.
Yeah, it's like the Family Feud of MTV.
Yes, and Wildin' Out. Those are two just like perfect because you don't have to pay attention. There's no plot. You don't have to pay attention for the first, 15 minutes, and then you could be like, look at the television. You're like, oh my gosh, that was funny. Who said that? Wildin' Out? Ha ha ha. Or wow, look at that. There's a video of somebody like jumping over a bus and hurting themselves, and then you go right back to what you were doing. Those are like brainless television programs. So I've watched an embarrassing amount of Wildin' Out.
And an embarrassing amount of Matt Rife, it sounds like.
And a ridiculous amount of ridiculousness. See what I did there?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to update you. I put some polls out pertaining to the Utah Jazz, their plans, their contingencies, and, of course, I'm going to call it a loss in the NBA draft lottery because a win would have been pick number 1. A loss is pick number 5. I'll update you on the polls. We'll give you some more thoughts. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 792 on FM. All right, some poll updates, and then we'll give away some golf, courtesy of the Utah Golf Association. The Festival of Tees still going on. We're giving away golf every single day, every single show here on your home of the Utes. Mountain America Credit Union hooks you up. Today it's 18 holes at Mount Ogden in Topical Trivia, which is coming up in about, we'll say, 7 minutes.
No stories about hypothetical people who might have broken the law around Mount Ogden.
Nope.
Right? Nothing for there?
Nope.
Okay.
Nope, don't have any of those. Hypothetical, made up, pretend, definitely didn't actually happen type of things. That was only a Mountain Dell situation.
Yeah.
East Dell, Mountain Dell.
A Mountain Dell urban legend,
yes,
if you will.
Yes. All right. Here, I put a couple poll questions out. So let's assume that the NBA draft lottery process is indeed rigged or scripted. Do you believe the league would rig things next year in order for the Utah Jazz to get A.J. DeBonsa from BYU, which, of course, is kind of the plan? This is the script written by Ryan Smith. Now, that's by Ryan Smith, not by the NBA. 94% of people say, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, I voted no because I disagree with the premise that it's rigged.
It is, though. But
also
fine.
also I probably would vote no if I did assume with you that it is rigged.
It's a double no for you.
It feels like it feels very unlikely. Also, not just because the Jazz have never had that kind of luck, right? Or felt like they've had that kind of standing with the league. But I wonder if the league and A.J. DeBonsa himself would be like, well, I'm not the hometown kid because I'm from Boston.
Yeah, I'm curious,
and they'd go
though.
and if we're assuming that kind of rigging happens, it would be for his actual hometown of Boston if they somehow got into the lottery.
Which without Jason Tatum next year, maybe.
And they've made a bunch. Danny Ainge still, I think some of his trades he made towards the end of his tenure are still out there. So we'll have to look it up. I don't know if somehow via another team they get in the lottery.
Wow.
Next year. We'll see.
If you're Jason Tatum, you really hate the NBA writing that script where you've got to tear your Achilles in order for them to get A.J. DeBonsa as the hometown hero. That's a tough one.
Who wrote this?
Yeah. This is, I think, a much more salient question. Should the Utah Jazz try to trade up to the number 2 or number 3 spot in this year's NBA draft? You're not going to get number 1. I didn't put number 1 on there for a reason because Dallas is picking Cooper Flagg, all right?
It is interesting. After I completely aggressively said there's no way that's happening yesterday on the show, there were the reports that said that Justin Zanuck, Danny Ainge, Ryan Smith were all saying, if we don't get number 1, we're going to try to trade for it.
Okay,
so
you can try to trade for it.
It's interesting that the Jazz organization is trying, even though it feels like a very impossible thing that the Dallas Mavericks will pass on taking Cooper Flagg. It's interesting that the Jazz are trying to put that messaging out there that, hey, we're going to try the impossible, though.
I'm going to try to be an astronaut tomorrow.
Yeah.
Okay? I'm going to try to convince my wife to sell all of our belongings and become surfers on the North Shore of Oahu. Like, it's not happening.
but I'll tell you I'm going to try.
I mean, it's just, okay, so congratulations on your efforts, I guess. But number 2 or number 3,
yeah.
Kristen Peak, we talked about it. They don't necessarily – the Spurs don't need Dylan Harper. I think they probably still want him, but they don't need him the way that the Jazz do necessarily. So do you try to package your draft capital and move up?
I would. You're obviously making a call to Dallas, even though it's an impossible thing. You've told the world you're going to do that.
Yes, everyone.
But even if
you try,
even if you didn't tell the world you're going to do that, you're making that phone call. So, yeah, absolutely, I'm making a call to San Antonio to say, hey, what would you be looking for in return for the number 2 pick if you were open to trading it? And my guess is it's going to have to include Lauri Markkanen. I don't see how the Spurs or any other team that would have been in that position wouldn't say, well, yeah, we want your best player.
So should the Jazz try to trade up? It's almost a 50-50 split.
Yeah.
49.6% say yes, you should. 50.4% say no, you should not.
So
And just pick a
majority.
number
So
5.
the majority thinks they should. Is what I'm hearing there by 0.8%. Yeah, I say no because no matter regardless of who you take at 5 or if you trade back, because that's another thing you might consider. Maybe we trade back, stay in the lottery, and get a young star that a team late in the lottery would be willing to unload, right? But even regardless of what you do with that 5 pick, you're going to be bad enough to be back in the lottery next year. And Kristen Peak told us this draft, next year's draft, as far as top end talent, is probably 5, 6, 7 deep versus 3, 4 deep in this draft. So you might as well stay where you are. Do another tank, and as long as you're near the top 5, you're probably going to get a really good player, a player that has a really good chance to be a star, similar to one of the Rutgers guys this year. So, I think I would, if the price is Lauri Markkanen and your 5th pick, I would say no. If you can do it without that somehow, absolutely trade that pick.
I also asked a question on how the Dallas Mavericks got the number 1 overall pick. Are they lucky or is it rigged? 88.5% say it's rigged.
My condolences to all of you that are feeling that way. It's such a rough time. There was so much anticipation to this.
Yeah.
To yesterday.
And nobody told the NBA office not to rig it.
Yeah.
In favor of the Dallas Mavericks, and so here we are.
That Ryan Smith should have called the commissioner and said, "Hey, don't rig it."
Okay.
And then it would have been fine.
Here's how it's going to play out, okay? This year, Ryan Smith got a phone call from the league office that said, "Hey, we need somebody to be the third party to help us facilitate a blockbuster trade. Are you willing to do this?" And he was like, "Well, what do I get out of the deal?" Well, I hate to break it to you. You're not going to get the number 1 pick this year, but you want to do this pipeline from BYU to your franchise?
Oh.
Help us do this, and next year you get the number 1 overall pick. And he probably deliberated and said, "You know what? Fine, let's do that." Which is why he did not send him. He didn't sit himself in the seat. He sent his wife.
Yeah.
And was just like, "Yep, you're going to go, and you're not going to look shocked. You're not going to look disappointed because this means we get AJ." All right?
I want so bad. I've decided I want so bad next year, if the Jazz, we're all assuming they'll be in the lottery again, be the first team to send your mascot to sit in the chair.
I would actually love that because
put the bear in the chair.
Why is it a bear? So many people would be so confused.
But have him ride in on a motorcycle, park it next to the podium that they have you sit at, and then sit down.
Who's the lady that spins the plates?
Oh, Red Panda. Yeah.
Bring her along too. Let's go. All right.
It's so great.
We're going to give away 18 holes to Mount Ogden with a trivia question next. Make sure you're listening and ready to respond at 877-353-0700. Question coming in 4 minutes on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network. 18 holes to Mount Ogden, courtesy of the Festival of Tees, powered by the Utah Golf Association and brought to you by Mountain America Credit Union. Spence Checketts will be also giving away the 18 holes today. I'm going to do it with some topical trivia. 877-353-0700. The Dallas Mavericks had a blank % chance of getting the number 1 pick in this year's NBA draft. And, of course, that hit. Good for you, Dallas. Well done, NBA script writers. 877-353-0700 if you know the correct answer. Crosstalk with Spence Checketts as the drive is next. How are you, sir?
I am well. Cannot say the same for our basketball fans across this fine city, but chilly Tuesday, cold afternoon. But I'm good, man. I'm good. Last night was a very consequential evening in the world of pro basketball.
Indeed.
On a lot of different levels.
What is your favorite explanation as to how this happened?
Oh, the one that's real, and that is it's called a lottery. And that is, have you ever bought a lottery ticket before?
That's no fun.
Have you ever? Oh, no, I'm aware that I'm about to harsh people's mellows today on the show. The best explanation is the one that's actually the real explanation, and that is
that this was a pick offered as compensation in return for Luka being sent to Los Angeles.
Yes. No, I'm aware that we currently live in a country that has very little trust in institutions. I'm aware of the climates across the country where if something doesn't go your way or you don't understand something, the easiest thing to do is just yell about how it's unfair. I'm aware.
Yeah.
But if I said to you, Sean, you have a 14% chance at happiness if you date my friend, would you be like, yes, I'd like to date your friend? It's a very low percentage chance of happiness.
Married, so I can't date your friend.
Well, it's hypothetical.
Yes.
I mean, look, the reality is the highest percentage of the chances the Jazz had last night it's where they landed, right?
You're
Which
right.
is wild. So the Jazz portion of this in no way, shape, or form indicates something is amiss. Now,
the Mavs one is the
Mavs portion of this. And look, I cannot sit here and tell you that things have not happened over the years that cause you to raise your eyebrows a little bit. But what I would say is the team that has benefited most ever since the NBA decided to go to a lottery system, by far, is the San Antonio Spurs. By far. If there's a team that's second, it might be the Cleveland Cavaliers. If there's a team that's third, it might be the New Orleans Pelicans. And when Zion Williamson was available, the team with the best chance of landing the number 1 overall pick was none other than the New York Knicks. And I think they fell to 6 and drafted Kevin Knox, who sucks, right?
But the Knicks had not traded their best player to the Lakers ahead of that lottery.
Sure. So like I said, are there some things that have happened where you're kind of like, doesn't smell right? Sure. But it's a raffle. It's a lottery. Now, is it the right way to do it? We can certainly have that conversation. But unfortunately, like back to my original point, where when things don't go your way and you feel like you're on the wrong side of a result, we live in a country now where you yell that it's rigged and you yell that it's cheated. You come up with a bunch of different examples. I've got a buddy who in high school, shout out my guy Eric, whenever we're together and we're coming up on our 30-year high school reunion, which is wild, I always overhear him tell the story about why he got cut from the basketball team. And it's, I didn't move into the school zone until I was like a freshman in high school and all of you were playing together and the coach was also the science teacher, and I hated science. And I always say, Eric, I was there. You sucked at basketball. Like, I was at the tryouts, man. You were a horrible player. And that's why you got cut.
Just catching strays right now in crosstalk.
He
sucked.
Love that. I love him. He's one of my best friends. But I swear, every 10 years, I overhear him tell the same story about why he got cut from the team. And I listen, and then I sit back. I'm like, dude, you were a horrible basketball player.
Okay, yeah.
So ultimately, sometimes the right explanation for when something happens is the most basic one, and that is it is a lottery. And sometimes people win the lottery when they have no chance at doing it, And just because the person won the lottery might have some cash in his pocket as opposed to somebody who's broke like the Jazz or the Wizards doesn't mean something is amiss. But if you're a Jazz fan today, it sucks, and there's no other way to put it. Like, it's not rigged, but it sucks.
Yeah, look, I'm probably middle ground in thinking that there's something a little too fishy for me. I'm not like super dyed in the wool, actually deeply believe.
Sure.
However, I'm also not like I won't dismiss the possibility.
Mm-hmm.
One thing I think we can all agree on, I think, in this community now, is that tanking ain't worth it.
For sure.
And that is now scientifically supported with the results in the most recent NBA lotteries. And I don't know what that means for the Utah Jazz moving forward, but that's why it's time to turn the show over to Spence, because he has all the answers.
I would say, well said. I do. Yeah, that comes up next.
Stay tuned for The Drive. Thanks to everyone who joined us on the show today. Thanks to all of you for listening. We'll do it again tomorrow. Sean O'Connell Show is over. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, proud part of Utah's ESPN radio network.